and I go like this to throw it,
Mhm.
and the ring,
I know.
because I was so sweaty. And like, I don't know how many people were in there on that floor, but maybe it was, 1,000 people or whatever on that floor. And I stopped and I was like, my ring, my ring. And sure enough, within 20 seconds, they bring my ring back up. And I was like,
Planet Guitar is delighted today to welcome Jared James Nichols. Welcome.
thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I noticed that it's the anniversary for you because it was 10 years ago that you did a very successful 2-month European tour, which led to the release of Old Glory. How do you recall that
That's
time?
so fun. Yes, I can't believe that. I've just been thinking about that recently because, like you said, it's been 10 years since that first tour. And it feels amazing. It feels like not a lot of time has went by, but also a ton of time. So I don't know. It's a mix of emotions, but I'm excited and I'm happy.
And of course, in that time, people like Joe Bonamassa has said you were the greatest guitarist to come out in the last 25 years, and many other plaudits. To go back, you were born in East Troy, Wisconsin, and I've been taking a look online. Lots of lovely wooden houses, um, beautiful lakes. I was just wondering, what was it like growing up in such a small town?
So growing up in such a small town, it's funny, I didn't even grow up in the town. I grew up 6 miles outside of that town. That just happened to be the closest town for me to go to school in.
Wow.
It was kind of crazy, to be honest, because I didn't know anything else. So living in the country, it just made sense. It's like you had to learn how to entertain yourself. So it was like we would go fishing, or we would take walks in the woods or start fires, or do whatever we wanted to. And even more so, when I was getting to that age of getting into sports or figuring out what I really wanted to do, when I found a guitar, I didn't have many distractions. There wasn't a lot to kind of say, oh well, I'm going to go hang out over here, or I'm busy with my friends here. It was more like I had all the time in the world to study and practice and just play my guitar, which was really cool. And I'm so glad that I grew up like that, because it gave me a really good foundation for just like really simple living.
Yes. Did
Mhm.
you feel like you wanted to get out?
Absolutely, especially as I started to get to that age where I was driving, and 16, 17, I started to play in clubs and play gigs. And I quickly realized that where I grew up was not the right place to be for
Mm.
for
Mm.
a gigging, or someone aspiring to do music. I never knew anyone that played music. I never knew anyone that was a professional musician whatsoever. So where I grew up, that was a very foreign kind of concept. And I quickly realized, if I'm going to do this, I got to get out of here.
So you didn't grow up with a musical family, siblings or parents at all?
Not at all. My brother did have a guitar, an acoustic guitar, like many, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to learn how to play guitar," and it never worked out for him. And I remember, truth be told, I didn't want to play the guitar. I wanted to be a drummer. I wanted to, because I thought that the drums were more exciting. And my dad heard me playing drums. I borrowed a drum set from a brother's friend, and he goes, "No way." He goes, "Why don't you try a guitar? It has a volume knob on it." And I said, you know what? I would try a guitar. And I just simply fell in love so quick with the instrument. It was almost like when I played the guitar, it was the first time in my life that I felt like powerful. I felt like, wow, this is like, it was such a rush.
I've noticed some very curious coincidences about your upbringing. Even though you were brought up in a farm, of course, on August 26, 1990, when you were just 2 years old, Stevie Ray Vaughan played near your house, and of
Mhm.
course was tragically killed in a helicopter accident. It's intriguing to me that he later became such an important figure in your life.
Yes. I mean, he was the biggest influence on me for so long, because I remember when I was learning how to play, my parents, my friends' parents, people I knew would say, "Well, do you know who Stevie Ray Vaughan is?" Do you know that he died right over there? And where I grew up was less than a mile from the site. Um, one of my uncles was one of the first responders to the accident. My mother actually remembers seeing the coroner drive by our house, as eerie as that is, the morning after. And
Wow.
it was kind of a really big deal. So when I first saw Stevie play, a friend borrowed me a VHS tape of him playing live at the El Macambo.
Uh-huh.
And there was something about it that was so powerful. And it was so, I don't know, it just resonated with me so deeply because I love rock. I grew up listening to classic rock, and my dad loved country and singer-songwriters, and I loved a wide aspect of popular music, but I was really getting into the blues. So when I found this Stevie Ray Vaughan guy, it was like, whoa, it sounds like rock, but it has like the intensity and it's exciting, but it's super bluesy. And something really resonated to the point where when I tried to pick up my guitar to do that, it was like I was mesmerized. And still to this day, he's an incredible inspiration. Just yesterday, actually, I was driving in the car and I put on some Stevie Ray because there's just still something about it that, as you age, your taste can change, your influences, you grow as a person. But Stevie's been one of those inspirations that's never been lost on me. And it's kind of wild to think, my brother, he's a police officer, and on his in the car, you can type in any name or address or anything. And if there's a file, you can see it. And I remember he said, "Oh, look at this." He typed in Stephen Vaughn and it showed everything. So it's pretty wild to think that I'm from that place.
It is. There's another
Yeah.
there's another very curious coincidence, which is at the age of 14, when you went to one of your first concerts. It was at Ozfest, I believe, with Aerosmith,
Yeah.
and Zakk Wylde was playing there. It's extraordinary
Mhm.
how he's such a close friend of yours.
Absolutely. I talked to Zakk. I've talked to him right before I talked to you.
Nice.
It's so funny how that worked out as well because even at that time, sure, I loved listening to classic rock. I was really into, obviously I call it like the Mount Rushmore, right? Zeppelin, The Who, Pink Floyd, like it's basically that British kind of classic rock in the stars, right?
Yeah.
And I love Sabbath. And I remember my cousin really wanted to go, and I didn't know any of the bands besides Ozzy. And I thought, okay, well, let's go because we could walk there. This is the same place that Stevie had played. So I said, we could walk there. So we walked over, and I remember we were like the first ones there. We walked over at like 10 a.m. And they said, here, take these wristbands. They gave us wristbands and they said, you guys get to go in front of the stage, like right in the front, because you're the first ones here. So there I am, 14 years old, and out walks Zakk Wylde with a Les Paul in front of a whole wall of Marshalls. And I remember I was scared, but I was also like, that's so crazy. It was almost like seeing, in a different way. It was like the Stevie thing where it was like this person seems larger than life. There was this energy in the music. It was almost like untouchable. And there was like a power to it where I was like, man, I just love the fact that when I'm listening to this person play, it was almost as if I could like see myself doing that. And you flash forward, to 2016, one of my first big tours, I get a phone call from Zakk Wylde. And he goes, "Hey man, somebody just showed me a video of you playing, and I got a tour coming up, world tour. Well, I want you to open." And as you could believe, I'm on the other end of the phone and I'm like, how? So it's really funny how sometimes that those kind of things work out. And I even told Zakk, I said, you know, I was at this show and there's pictures online of this show. And he goes, "You were really there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man." So it's pretty cool.
That video that you mentioned, 2016, it picked up, as you know, 7 million views within a few weeks, and
Yeah.
and triggered Zakk ringing you. I'm just wondering, how you coped with that sudden change in your life?
Oh my gosh. What a great question, first off. What was really strange is like all of us, no matter what we do, you're kind of just living your life in a day-to-day situation where for me, a lot of the time, I'm just trying to navigate, right? And you're trying to, okay, what do I have to do today? And especially as a musician, you think to yourself, okay, what am I going to do to get to the next level? Every day you think like that, right? Or how do I do this? How do I do this? So most of my time was spent kind of just like working and trying to push forward. Then when this video comes out, I remember my manager Phil goes, Jared, there's going to be a camera crew following you around for a few weeks. And I was kind of like, okay. And at first it was really weird because I was always had a microphone on me and there was a camera. So I started to kind of let my guard down and I was just being myself. And they said, okay, this video is going to come out. And I thought, that's cool. It's like any other video I've put out, right? Or that's come out about me. But this one seemed to really resonate. And like you said, it got a ton of views very, very quickly. And at first, I was really nervous about it because I felt vulnerable. I
Mm,
felt like I was exposing myself to the world and I didn't know, I wasn't sure how I felt about that.
mm.
But what I loved about that, and still to this day, people will come up to me and say, man, I saw that video, of you and it really inspired me, or I'm so happy that I finally get to connect with you and see you in concert or whatever it is. And it was kind of crazy because after that video, it was kind of like things just flipped upside down a little bit. It went from zero to, I don't want to say 0 to 100, but it went 0 to like 60, where I was like, okay, now we have tours. I'm going to go on tour. I'm going to do this. I have this interview. It just got a lot more intense right away. And I'm forever grateful for that.
I read online, I'm not sure if this is even true. You read all
Uh-huh.
sorts of things online, but
Yeah.
did you really jam with Howling Wolf's Hubert Sumling? Sumling, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How did
Oh,
that come
yeah.
about?
Okay, so like I was telling you, I was so into the blues, and Stevie was one of those gateways. And like a lot of the guitar players and musicians, you go, okay, well, who did Jimi Hendrix listen to, and who did And I was looking, and at this time, you're gonna laugh. We didn't even have a computer at my house, so I was going and I was buying books. Like I had a Stevie Ray Vaughan book, and I was reading it with the influences, and I remember going to a store. It was a Walmart which had a CD section. And I remember going, okay, I know that Stevie Ray Vaughan really liked Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters. He liked Buddy Guy. He liked Otis Rush. I was thinking of all these different people that I heard. And I remember getting this Howlin' Wolf CD, and it was like $3. It was nothing. And I remember getting it and I was listening to it. And there was a local blues organization. And Hubert Sumlin used to live in Milwaukee, the city that's about 40 miles from where I grew up. And I remember they said, we're going to have an event and Hubert's going to play. And I was so excited. And the lady who ran the event was like, she knew I was like into this stuff. I was a 15-year-old kid. I was just like, thinking this was bigger than the world. And I remember going there, and Hubert, I got to meet him, and he could see I was so nervous. There's a picture somewhere of this. I know there is. I
Ah,
have it somewhere. And I remember I got to go on stage and I got to play Spoonful with Hubert. And this was right around the time because I started to, as a guitar player, at this time I was playing with a guitar pick, although I'm a lefty. I was playing with a guitar pick and it wasn't feeling right. And Hubert went up there, no guitar pick, and he was playing. And I remember watching him play, and I was like, I want to make that sound. And it was such a cool moment because there I am. I'm sitting there going, I'm jamming with the same guy who jammed with the legends of the blues. And furthermore, right after that, I got to jam with a gentleman named Honeyboy Edwards, which was at the time the oldest living bluesman who had played with Robert Johnson. And we're talking Delta blues. And I got to jam with this guy. And within like 3 months, I jammed with these two legends. So as you can only imagine, my inspiration was out of control at this point. I was just so excited, so just over the moon about blues and playing. And actually Hubert signed one of my guitars. I still have.
Oh,
He
wow.
signed in the back. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You're, of course, known for playing with Epiphone and Gibson Les Pauls. But I
Mhm.
noticed on a page on Equipboard, it mentions a couple of acoustic guitars. One's an Epiphone Frontier, and the other's a Gibson Hummingbird. Is that right? Do you have those two guitars?
I have a Frontier. I
Yeah,
do have a Frontier.
yeah.
I've never owned a Hummingbird. That's
Okay.
interesting. No, it's good that you check that out. That's interesting. No, I want to say though, I have so Gibson's been so good to me that I have used a Hummingbird before for performances because sometimes I'm such an electric player
Yeah.
that when I have to do something that involves acoustic, I'll say to, my friends over there, "Hey, can I borrow this or can I borrow this?" So there has been times I have played a Hummingbird, but I've never owned one.
Okay.
Gorgeous guitars though. Love them.
I was wondering what place acoustic guitars have in your life. Do you regularly play them? Do you use them to compose, for example?
Yes. So when I'm home, I spend, let's say in a week, I'll spend 3 days a week, either getting together with songwriters here in Nashville or friends of mine, whatever, and I'll have an acoustic. I feel like an acoustic for me is like it's the architecture, right? It's the bones of whatever is going to come after that. An electric is great to write on. An electric to me can bring it's my favorite. I would die for an electric guitar, right? But the acoustic, it's like if you write something and it holds up on an acoustic and you can sing it and play it, then I feel like that you have a song. And I think acoustic's so important because it doesn't overshadow any aspect. It's almost like a raw human voice. If you have an acoustic guitar and a voice, that's what you have. The complexity is in the simplicity. And I love acoustic guitars. It's just like Billy Gibbons told me one time, he's like, he goes, "Man," he goes, "we're not librarians." He goes, "We need electric guitars." And I went, "What do you mean librarians?" He's like, "We don't play it safe. We don't, play it quiet." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. But there is a beauty to an acoustic that I can't not have in my life."
You mentioned voice. I know that when you were young, you were a bit reticent to sing. But and
Mhm.
in one interview, you said that you've had to work on your voice just as much as your guitar, which for me is a mind-blowing thought.
Yeah. Well, here's for me, I always wanted to have my own trio. That was always my goal. When I'd look at my heroes, I'd look at like Johnny Winter, Robin Trower, Cream, Leslie West, Hendrix, all these power trio guys of the late 60s and early 70s. And a lot of them, when they started to sing, it was almost out of necessity, right? And I remember when I started my first trio, I'd moved to Los Angeles. I'd done the big boy move where I was like, okay, I'm moving. We're going to see what happens. I remember I found myself in a room with a drummer and a bass player, and we looked at each other, and the drummer said, "Who's going to sing?" And I went, "I guess I will." Right. So at this point, I mean, the only singing I did was in a shower. And I remember when I started, I was so nervous because, simply put, I feel like the voice is the most personal, component to anything musical. And like many, I started to try and sing like Stevie Ray, or I tried to have this really gruff voice, ugh.
Yeah.
And I was just a kid, like young, and it wasn't really working, but I knew in my heart that this is truly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it was almost as if I had to put myself in that really uncomfortable situation where it's like you're forcing yourself to fail a little bit in order to get over that timidness and the fear of having to sing. And I remember I hit the ground running. We did one show. You'll love this. We did a show, and I remember I was singing and I was trying to sing and it like my voice was ooh, like hoarse, you know? I'd go for something powerful and I'd squeak or whatever. And I said to myself, never again. I need to really learn how to do it. So I would sit there and I would have a guitar and I would just go, I'd hit a chord and I go, trying to figure out where to breathe and how to, ooh, whatever. And I sat and I sat and I sat, and then I'd go in a room and I'd scream into a microphone, and then I'd come back and say, okay, what did I do right? I'd record myself. And it was almost as if I had to completely teach myself how to sing and also try and find my voice because it's almost like guitar, right? No one picks up a guitar. I don't care who you are. I've never seen someone pick up a guitar and be able to have the dexterity right away. With voice, some people are naturally okay, they can sing, like they have that natural. I definitely did not have that. So it singing is something I constantly work on too. It's one of those things like I feel like you can continue to develop, and as you grow as a songwriter, as I grow as a musician, I'll say I'll hear something and I'll go, well, I want to sing it like that. And
Mm.
it's like, okay, I need to make sure I can do that. So it's kind of crazy because as much as I put into the guitar, I've had to put equal as amount into being able to sing. It's wild.
Now you're living in Nashville. Did you move there
Mhm.
wholly for the music scene or partly for the music scene?
Well, to be honest with you, I started to tour in America a lot. And I had friends that were leaving Los Angeles and they were saying, oh, we're moving to Nashville.
Mm.
And I would go, why? And they said, well, it's a lot cheaper to live here, right? Compared to Los Angeles, which was it's a very expensive city. And then they would say, and it's really central in America. So while you're touring, you can go into the Midwest, into the South, East Coast very easily. And we started to tour here, and Gibson's located here as well. And
Okay.
obviously, I do a ton of work with them.
Mm.
And I realized really quick, I was like, wow, this is a really kind of peaceful place to live because for 9 years, I lived in Hollywood and it was just like 24/7, right? And I started to hang out here more and more. And also, this is about 8 hours from where I grew up and where my wife grew up. We grew up in the same spot, basically. And it was a lot closer to home. So, after about a decade of not going home and living in a crazy town, it was like, you know what? Maybe we could go there. Then I realized how much opportunity was here musically. And it was like, yeah. So whenever I talk to young musicians, not even young musicians, just people that are wondering, hey, whether they're in Europe or somewhere in the States, and they go, where should I go as a city? I'll say forever Nashville because it's just there's so much happening at any given time. There's there's the music of the city, but then there's all the people that live here that, even like myself that don't really play around Nashville, but there's just hundreds, maybe thousands of musicians that just live here and make music and use it as kind of a hub to do touring across the world.
Forgive me for name dropping, but of course you live in this incredible music ambience. I'm wondering if you ever come
Oh yeah,
across Jimi Hendrix's bass player, Billy Cox.
Billy. So you know what's funny? I've known Billy since 2008. So before a long, long time ago, I got a funny story. It's not a long story, but I met Billy Cox and Mitch Mitchell at the Experience Hendrix tour.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, yeah, yeah, I was not 18 years old and Mitch was not in a good mood, but Billy was like in the best mood ever. And Mitch was looking around and he goes, I need a towel. I need a towel. There was like a backstage area. And I saw the thing of towels right there. And I was like, here you go. And I hand him a towel and he's like, thanks, man. And he goes, oh, those are cool boots. I used to have a pair of boots. I was wearing like some Beatle boots. And I was like, thanks. And me and my friend are just like, it's Mitch Mitchell. Like, what the heck? And I met Billy and I got Billy's number that night. So it's funny. I met Billy 15 years ago. It's funny. I have not seen him or ran into him anywhere in Nashville, but across the world, I've seen him maybe 3 or 4 times over the years. And He's the best. He's the absolute best, man. One of my favorites.
That's lovely. And of course, you've got Peter Frampton, who's going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame later this year. You've got Dave
Yes.
Mustaine.
Uh-huh.
Do you,
It's crazy. It's funny. Both of those guys,
yeah.
right? So I'll see her on Sunday.
Uh-huh.
He's receiving the Les Paul Award, for his contributions in music.
Uh-huh.
And Dave is a friend. Me and Dave text back and forth all the time.
Right.
And it's it's really funny because, I think back in the day, if you lived in, let's say you lived in Los Angeles or whatever, it's like, oh yeah, they live up in Hollywood or wherever. In Nashville, it's so much more open, and it's just really cool because, like, I think a lot of people they just love the fact that it's a little bit more of a community. And you'll see these people around, you'll go to, let's say you go to an event or you go to a show, you will see people and you go, oh, that's so and so from that band. It's not very uncommon to see people just hanging out, having a good time, which is really cool.
Thank you so much. This is a left
Yeah,
field.
man.
This is a left field question for you, something a bit
Yeah.
different. I've noticed in all your videos, you're wearing a lot of jewelry, rings, and everything. And I was just
Yeah.
wondering if you have a favorite, if you have a favorite ring or one that has a special story.
Well, you know what? That's a great question. I do. And this is, you'll laugh at this. Um, I am very hard on my clothes and my, when I'm touring, right? So like, a lot of people, they'll say, Jared, you need a shirt. You need a different shirt. Jared, you need different pants, right? And I go, yeah. And I'll wear through this stuff really fast. And even with jewelry, if it's not like some serious silver or like something that's very I don't even want to use the word expensive. My neck will turn green or whatever, right? From it being copper or whatever.
Uh,
Um, but actually, I started to get into that from my dad because he would wear jewelry and stuff, and I was always like, "Oh, that's cool." And when he passed away, my brother gave me all of his jewelry. So like even like this ring right here, you can't really see. It's just a very simple silver ring.
yeah,
But this ring, he wore this for about 35 years. And it's funny because my wife bought me a wedding ring, and it was like it didn't feel good on my finger. And I went and I was like, let me just see what is in my dad's box, right? And I pulled this one out, and I've been wearing this ring for like the past year, and I absolutely love it. And it's cool because it was one of his, right?
yeah,
This bracelet was one of his. This
yeah,
was from Japan. But it's everything has a little bit of a story. And I feel like I'm one of those people that I like things that have stories. I
yeah,
like things that, I never really buy stuff online, if that's the right way to say it. I'm not a person that's like, oh, let me go look at this necklace online or whatever. All of my stuff has to come from somewhere where it's like, oh yeah, I got that from my friend at this, I was playing a festival and this guy gave me this or whatever. And this ring that I'm wearing, this ring right here, I got this in London
uh-huh,
at a place called the Great Frog, which is a famous jewelry spot. It's like where Keith Richards got his skull ring and stuff. And I remember I saved at the time, this was like, I think it was 250 pounds. So like, and now these rings are like 1,000 pounds. But at the time, this was every dollar. I got this in 2015. And I remember I got it and I was like, I can't lose this. And you'll laugh because I've had this ring now. I wear it all the time. And we were playing in London at Shepherd's Bush Empire this last, I want to say this was about 2 months ago. And I was so sweaty after the set that I was like, oh man. And somebody wanted a set list or something.
uh-huh,
And there was like a guy standing there, he's like, please hand me the set list.
uh-huh,
So I crumple it up just a little bit, right? And I go like this to throw it.
uh-huh.
And the ring,
I know.
because I was so sweaty. And like, I don't know how many people were in there on that floor, but maybe it was, 1,000 people or whatever on that floor. And I stopped and I was like, my ring, my ring. And sure enough, within 20 seconds, they bring my ring back up. And I was like, oh, so all of my stuff has a special meaning and a story. And I like to, I like that because it feels more like there's a journey behind everything. It's like all my guitars.
They're great stories.
Yeah, man.
I think you just finished some gigs in the US leg of your tour, and soon you're off to Britain.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of gigs there. You looking forward to it?
So looking forward to it. Every time I go to the UK, it's like it's a comfortable place for me to tour. I remember not only because of the language, of course, you know, me speaking English going to England, but there's something about the fans there, the way that what I play, I've always had a great response. And I remember before I ever went there, a friend of mine, his name was Alan Niven. He was an ex-manager of Guns N' Roses. And I remember he said to me, he's smoking, he goes, "Yo, if you ever go to England, they're gonna eat you alive. You know, they're real music fans." And I'm like, uh-oh. But I remember the first time I went, I was like, this is great. I love it. I love the people. I love the energy. And every time I go back, it gets better. And that's all I can ask for. And I was over there, like I said, this was in March, or I'm sorry, April, going into May. I was over in England for a few shows across a big European tour. And it just keeps getting better. So we actually dubbed the tour like UK Holiday because like we're gonna go over, we're gonna play like 7 or 8 shows, and it's gonna be great.
Sounds like those gigs are definitely ones to look out for. Jared, it's been
It'll
a
be
real
fun.
pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, and it was great speaking with you. And hopefully, I'll catch you in the real world.
I hope so. Cheers.
Cheers, man.